Is the lighting too moody? Hey internet, Adrian here. Kicking this a little old school, just hitting record and gonna talk to the camera. No real notes, scripts, or what have you. I thought this video was fitting to upload amidst a time where, one, I just recently launched a new YouTube channel, Dojo Gamers. It's gonna be my third YouTube channel alongside this personal channel, my Digital Dojos channel, in relation to gaming content. And I thought it was fitting for the opposite spectrum of a conversation and discourse and discussion that's happening across this platform right now. And that's in talks about leaving it, quitting, retiring, burnout, or taking a break or step back from YouTube. But I think more as a whole, content creation is more so what I want to focus on. Because while, yes, this is the platform that we're talking about and on, I think it can apply to anyone in the creative or content creation space. I am no stranger to this topic, these feelings, these thoughts, and I'm glad more and more of these conversations are happening now in lieu of many big and OG YouTubers kind of ramping it back, quitting altogether, taking a break, or at least acknowledging the burnout and the reality of this industry and career. I think as someone who joined in 2006, I've been uploading now on YouTube for over 18 plus years. I've had the opportunity, the privilege to do it as a passion and a hobby, and a kid just uploading random tech videos to the internet, to somebody who got to do it for a living, a career. I took a passion, I turned it into a profit, I turned that into a business, I turned that into a career. And I've got to live through all those life cycles and still be sitting here 18 years later and get to look back at that journey and still be creating and talk a little bit about that. Because it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows. It's had its ups and downs, like many YouTubers have alluded to. And I think it's great because this conversation around this reminds me so much of early YouTube. When video responses were a thing, if you remember that, you could respond to other people's videos and it would show up underneath it. That was one of my favorite features. I understand kind of why they took that away nowadays, but aside the point. I have always loved creating content, whether it was here on YouTube or uploading to a blogger or Blogspot or Tumblr or my own website, or streaming on Ustream.tv and then Justin.tv before that became Twitch, uploading podcasts back on iTunes when that first came out. I've always loved exploring the medium that is content creation in all forms, shapes, and sizes. I've uploaded thousands and thousands of videos to the internet. I've reached millions across a global audience, and there's not a second throughout that 18-year journey that has ever been lost on me. It is as crazy as when I was 11 years old, hit that upload button and saw those numbers go, 1 viewer, 2 views, 3 views, and just think about how many people can potentially see this video and the reach and the scale. And to think nowadays you can upload a picture or an Instagram or a TikTok or a story and it can be viewed by quite literally hundreds, thousands, millions of people. And it's just that I always subscribe to this notion of creating for an audience of one. It's something I've always subscribed to. It's something I still do to this day, where if you create for that audience of one, and that one person is on the other side who finds value in your content, then I'm going to be creating. Whether or not YouTube is around, I used to say 5-10 years ago, then I'm still going to be creating on some sort of platform or some sort of medium, and shifting as long as I have the ability to create, which was always important to me. You see, the shift, like many have alluded to, is when you're doing that for fun in a hobby, and then you cross this bridge into doing it for a profit, and then it's a nice to have, and it's a nice side thing, and then that becomes more of a real thing and a real job, and nowadays it's a thing that people aspire for, like MKBHD talked about. That was never a notion back in our day. When I started on YouTube, it was never an idea or inkling in my mind that it would be like what I ended up doing full time and for a living. Like, I eventually came to a decision in my life where I said I am not going to go to college because I'm going to go all in on this, and like that was a huge risk. You can imagine how my parents felt back then. But again, I think obviously it's easy to sit here and say like it all worked out and whatnot, but it doesn't. The reality is it doesn't for a lot of other people. And the more saturated the market gets and so on and so forth, And nowadays you have so many people who are content creators in some aspect, like, um, it makes it even harder and more difficult. And that's the other thing. Like, I've always believed the notion that, or I guess not believe the notion that if you love what you do, that you'll never have to work a day in your life. Like, that's complete BS. It makes it arguably 10 times harder. And it's the reason why many people don't do what they quote unquote love or are passionate about. And it's understandable, because if everyone can go be that dream job or athlete or gamer or live streamer or, what have you, then people would go and do that if it was that simple and easy. But I think that crossing, that going from doing something that you love to doing something that is now a burden, a responsibility, something that you not necessarily have to clock in for, but you got to do to pay the bills. It's very different than when you're just doing it to be creative and doing it for the love of it. Sometimes, and I think in many aspects, if you can cross those two, if you can find that balance between the two, that's the struggle. And that's the goal, but it's also the struggle, right? I remember when I started first getting like advertiser deals and sponsor offers to like put up random ads on my website or mention them in a YouTube video or review their product or whatever. It was hard, especially early on when I was learning, to like turn down $100, $500, $5,000, right? And the figures as you scale and grow, like going even higher. I'm not going to sit here and say I was perfect. Like, I've made many mistakes in my content creation journey. I've taken some of that sponsorship money in the past, but I've also learned, and ultimately the most important lesson I learned out of that was like also understanding, at least from the business side, your integrity and your reputation, because like that's a lot of what you have as a content creator, as an online persona and personality. And I had to learn that the hard way. And I had to learn, like, ultimately it's not worth jeopardizing my community, my viewership, my reputation for some of those things. But those are all struggles that not a lot of creators like get to vocalize, and I think a lot of things that people don't think about. Now, don't get me wrong, much like what MKBHD said, like, I am still super fortunate to have what I have, to be at where I'm at in my life and my career. But I've also been through so many stages of it, right? Now my primary business venture is my IT consulting business that I run with my colleagues and partners. And that forced me a couple years ago to be more of a backseat content creator than a forward content creator, in the sense that, like, this is not my main source of income anymore. It's still a passive form of income. It's still a part of the business ventures that I own and operate, but I don't have to do this on a full-time basis. And that really allowed me to kind of take a step back and do things differently. It allowed me to explore content again, just for the sake of exploring it, not really caring if it was a huge hit or if I got a top tier, top ranked video, or if I got really good ad revenue. I haven't taken a sponsor in over nearly 2 years plus, I think, give or take. And I've gotten the ability to do that because I'm very fortunate I got to build up my brand and opportunities over time. Not everybody has that luxury when you're starting out, or just in general. I say all that to say that, again, like, there is that fine line of, like, for the people who do eventually get to make a living, quote unquote, out of what they're doing, and how that can kind of change the perception and the, passion and love behind what you do. Not to mention just, like, inherently for at least platforms like YouTube, and I'm sure there's some aspect of live streaming here where the algorithm and trends, just to kind of keep up with it, is pretty, like, ruthless, right, to say the least. Like, with YouTube, I think it's a lot about, consistency and having, not necessarily viral hits, but finding out that, like, perfect formula for your niche and market, whether it's like upload time and thumbnail and video length and yada yada yada, to, like, live streamers, which I would argue is probably even harder in certain aspects, because, like, you have to retain an audience live. Like, if I upload a YouTube video, once I upload this, you're watching this, like, I've done my job. I can just leave it up there and you can watch it. Whereas, like, live streaming, it's like on demand entertainment, right? And you got to maintain that audience as you're going. So, like, these things are difficult, and they come with their own sets of responsibilities. Again, MKBHD hit on it. Like, most people don't realize when you do this and you get to do it eventually for a living, like, you have to wear so many hats. You have to edit, you have to shoot, you have to talk to sponsors, be your PR, be your marketing, until you get to a point where maybe you can hire a team and outsource. And I got to that point eventually too. And that took the pressure that was already there of just independent pressure of just me doing well to succeed, to now having a responsibility of partners and colleagues and employees and so on and so forth. And that's a whole different ballgame that you have to worry about. And then inversely, you have the creators who just want to stay solo shops. Matt Diavella, another YouTuber that I follow, also talked about this in his topic and video where he talked about scaling back on YouTube to the point of where he let go of his team of editors and writers and researchers to get back to being just a one-man shop. And I can only, envy and understand the idea behind it, getting back to how you started. And if you don't want to scale at such a pace and to a certain degree, that's okay. And being okay with that, because, that's still very successful in its own right. And if you find happiness and less stress because of it, then more power to you. I also say all this to say that, like, I've never considered quitting this, even when it was tough, even when it was hard, even like when things I thought weren't going to work out, or you had the bad years and so on and so forth. There was points where I got tired, burnt out, whatever you want to call it. But for me, it was always about pivoting. Like, I knew regardless of what I did, I would still be creating in some aspect. Even if I stopped doing YouTube videos, I would have to, like, create another business or create another platform or create an app. Like, whatever it was, like, I would have to create something because I couldn't just sit idly. Like, that's who I am. I've never seriously thought about quitting content creation as a whole, because I do genuinely just love creating things and putting things out there, whether it's an Instagram story or short or YouTube video or a video essay. Like, to be able to flex that creative muscle is something I need to do, right? Like, the biggest change for me was understanding that I am not making videos to make money or making content to make money. I am making money so that I can keep on making content. That's what flipped the switch for me, and inherently has also allowed me to succeed in my field. Now, are there regrets in my content creation journey? Are there points where I thought or could have done something a different way or whatever? Yeah, 100%, like anybody. Like, there's a lot of moments I look back in my content creation journey where I could have capitalized more on something or done things a different way or followed a different trend. And maybe I regret it, but at the same time, like, ultimately I am where I'm at today, right? Yesterday was yesterday. Today's today, and the only thing I can change is tomorrow and the future. So I try to focus on that, right? I say all this to say I get where a lot of these other content creators are coming from. I say all this to say that I want to provide some insight as to those who maybe watch those things and think, how in the world can people like that get tired or bored or burnt out of the thing that they're doing because they love doing it? And you just got to understand there's always two sides to that, right? I think it's unfortunately one of those things that you truthfully can't tell until you're in it, or really understand until you're in it. And even when you're in it, when it's good, it's good. And maybe it's good for the first year or 2 years. And as with all things, as time rolls on, some people find the abilities and the coping mechanisms to maintain that. The only reason I've been able to do this for 18 plus years is because I've had my waves of ups and downs. Like, I've had my full on doing it as a business, the sole provider and income source in my life, to I'm okay if I make a couple bucks in passive income from it this month. I'm okay if I make nothing, right? Like, I've rid all those spectrums of this content creation journey. And I can understand the people who want to reel it in or take it back or leave or quit or pivot to something new. Like, you forget that you're watching creators and you're watching the stuff that they create, but they're also just people behind those videos. And much like you, your passions, your interests will change. It's kind of how I think. Like, I watch as many people online and across different platforms, whether it's YouTube live stream and so on. And I think about old creators I used to watch, or like people I don't really watch anymore. And because like anybody, like, my interests have changed, and it's not necessarily that I have an issue with them or I think their content is worse or whatever nowadays. It's just that my interests have changed. Maybe I'm not watching Minecraft Let's Plays all the time anymore or what have you. But like, you get what I'm saying. People's interests change, the audience changes, you change, and priorities shift in your own lives. So the same thing can be said for the people on the opposite spectrum, the creators. And look, I think the stigma behind this and the reason why we're only kind of seeing more of it now is because it can very much sound like this whole woe is me. Like, feel bad for the guy who got to do YouTube for 10 plus years, and it's the reason why I have all the fun stuff I have behind me and around me, and even arguably why I got to have the IT consultancy business where I'm at today is because of all of that. And I think there is a little bit of that. There's a little bit of imposter syndrome, or there's a little bit of like, if I complain, people will feel like it's not justified, it's not grounded when you have so much to be thankful for. So people don't say anything. And maybe you talk to like other creators, or you find the ability to cope with people who can relate to your struggles, like anything. Again, it's okay to seemingly have what others may envy or crave for, or work really hard for it but not get to, and still have sentiments on how it could be better, or how the system could be better, or how the algorithms can be better, or how the industry can be better, or how just you can find better peace or whatever it is within yourself to make those appropriate changes. And for some, that means stepping away entirely. For some, that means changing the schedule and the frequency in which they put things out. For some, it means pivoting to some other genre or category entirely. There is no silver bullet. It's going to be different for everyone. I have struggled in my content creation journey, even now getting up to this point, even in launching this new gaming channel to bring things full circle. I used to do gaming channel or gaming related content back on my technology channel. It was some of my favorite stuff. And I remember at a certain point in my life, it felt like a cheat code. I remember vividly being out with friends on a summer night. For some reason, I remember we were on a trampoline, of all things, and my phone kind of profusely goes off my pocket. And it was because of notifications from getting paid from PayPal payments from Fiverr, which was like a service that still exists now, but I was uploading videos there very early days of my client services industry. Pay from my YouTube videos is coming in through AdSense. Like, it just so happened that all those like payments kind of hit at once. And I was like, this is like, it's crazy to me. It is crazy to me that I get to be out here doing this, having fun, and all this work I put in is just like coming in and manifesting, right? And it felt like a cheat code. I get to upload games or videos of me playing games with friends and blogs and so on, and I get paid for that, right? Like, that felt so mind-blowing and boggling, even after already being in the tree for a couple of years. And a part of me is like, there can never be a point where like this gets old. And then when it got old, and when it got tiring, when it got, repetitive, I felt for the longest time like, no, I can't stop doing this. I can't not do this, because like, why would you walk away like when you're at the not necessarily the top of like the game, but like your own personal game? And that's what I meant for me. Like, when things were going really well, why would I walk away from this? But I did. I physically moved. I moved from Japan to the States. I took a year almost off of content creation. I say a year, but truthfully, a couple months in, I started creating things on the side. But I took a year off of like focusing on content creation for a living. And that was a scary thing to do. And ultimately, it was the right thing to do, because I wanted to try something new in my career. I wanted to challenge myself. And ultimately, that led to where I'm at today, and starting the new business venture that I started today. And still being able to do all those other things in certain capacity, to now sitting down to thinking about, when do I launch this gaming channel that I've been wanting to do for the longest time. I've been telling myself, I'm going to get these things done, and then I'll prioritize that. New Year's coming up, I'll start it then. And just realizing, like, sometimes you just got to do it, right? Sometimes you just got to hit record, hit upload, and get it done with and get started. And that would be my advice for those who are aspiring to do this, because I say all of this in this entire 20-minute diatribe, and maybe you see the other people doing it, and trust me, it's not to discourage other people from wanting to get into this. It's to shed insight into the realities of somebody who's been in this position, the ups and the downs, and it's not to shy or deter or scare people away from trying to pursue this, because I was once that kid who had envious dreams of where I'm at and get to be at today. And know that, yes, it's possible if you put in the right time, the effort, the work, and kind of circumstances of timing and so on and so forth. But, just know that all that hard work is going to be hard, and that time you put in is going to be tough, and you're going to come across your own creative struggles. And I think as long as you try to stay true to why you started and what you're doing, and keeping that North Star to some degree, then that helps you along the journey. And while it still is hard, and while it will still be work, it makes it worth it. And again, for me, whether it's going to be here on YouTube or whatever platform exists in 5, 10, 20 years, if there is just one person on the other side of this finding value in the things that I have to say, that I have to upload, whether it's entertainment, whether it's educational, whether it's insightful, or yada, 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 then I'm going to find a way to upload. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thanks for watching.